Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this evening. Peter, is this the second time or third time I've been asked to speak at the conference?
I think we are looking at number 3.
Yeah, I
because we
think we
like you
are.
so much. You do
Well,
a great job, so why wouldn't we ask you back?
I'm cheap, Peter. I think that's what it is. Brilliant. Well, no, it's great to be here again this evening, and a warm welcome to everybody for giving up your time. And I know as volunteers within the sporting sector, we do, give up a lot of our time when we're volunteering in sport. But Peter and the team asked me to talk about the voices of children. It was really interesting just to hear what Joe was saying then about the strategy around creating engaging experiences for people. And so hopefully I'll be able to talk to you a little bit more about how we listen to the voices of children, and what does that look like in the sporting sector, and thinking about bringing in some other conversations models maybe from other disciplines like youth and community work, which I think is very much embedded within sport and physical opportunities, sport and physical activity opportunities for children. I know that a lot of my early sporting opportunities was facilitated through youth services, so I think that there's quite a close correlation between both sectors. So I work for the Child Protection and Sport Unit, for those of you that haven't met me before, and we're a dedicated team within the NSPCC, and we support lots of NGBs and active partnerships up and down the country, with the exception of Scotland, around their safeguarding arrangements. And I've been working with Peter for probably about 5 or 6 years now. Peter, aren't you lucky? Or unfortunately for you, you've had to put up with me for so long. So I just wanted to start off really with just opening the floor to yourselves. Maybe you can either pop it in the chat, or you can open mic and just shout out at me about what you think the benefits are when we listen to children and young people. So, maybe we'll start with, what are the benefits to the child if, as an organisation, a sporting NGB, listening to children, what benefits will that give to the actual child? Any thoughts from people? So either pop it in the chat, or you can unmute. Please don't be shy. And there's no such thing as a silly answer or silly questions and all of that stuff. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lynn, for being the first one in there. So yes, a child feels valued and recognised. I love that one. So we're seeing the actual child. I love that, that person in front of us. Sheila, thank you for keeping in touch with what they need and how they feel, ensuring the delivery is the best sport and activity. Absolutely. We're going to hear from them what they want, isn't it? So yeah. Thanks, Judith, for feeling engaged. Peter's popped in there about children feels important and part of the sport. Absolutely. Nikki, yeah, absolutely. Children are going to feel valued, aren't they? So what this just about to say to that valued bit, isn't it? So, they're valued in their opinions about things that are important to them. Brilliant. I'm just going to do a quick reveal on my slides, because I don't think anything more is going to come through unless people are quickly, frantically typing away. So yeah, so what it gives us, it's going to give us that opportunity for like that safer culture that children and young people are going to be engaging in. And I think that that's what we need to be doing. So it's, the work that we've been doing in CPSU, we're moving away from that compliance and just that tick box of safeguarding. And what we want to do is we want to create safer cultures where everybody feels valued, which is a keyword that came out, engaged in the process, feels important, feels heard, that we're trying to create that place where it creates that psychological safety. It creates that environment where we're welcomed. So that all helps us to create that safer culture. And it does provide those unique opportunities to get the views of children and young people. And it helps us to know if they've got any concerns or worries. So whether it be concerns or worries that are happening to them actually inside of sport. And we've all heard the horror stories and the shocking stories in the news around safeguarding within sport. but also we're going to hear what's happening for those young people outside of sport. And I've got some statistics for you in a minute about that. But I always think it takes a village to raise a child, and we're part of that children's village. So if we think about the young people that access your clubs, they probably see you quite a lot, and you are those trusted adults in their lives. So one of the things that we say in our colleagues from Childline is we encourage children and young people to tell a trusted adult if they've got any concerns or worries. So we're part of that safety mechanism, that safety net for children and young people with their protected carers, and we're able to hear their views if they've got any concerns or things that are worrying them. It does give us the opportunity about involving them in planning as well. So it gives that better engagement. That's, that's part of your strategy. Gives them that better engagement, and we're providing a service then that they want, that they're gonna access. And I just think about I can't even remember who told me this story, but there was a small voluntary group that was working out of a village hall, and one of the things that it was a lovely group of older people who thought that by getting young people involved, they would buy some sewing machines and they teach the girls how to sew, and by having girls at the village hall, it would encourage the boys to come along. How many young people do you think engaged in that activity? Zero. And it's like that whole thing around what a waste of money that was, a waste of everybody's time and effort to try and get those young people to get involved in the service for them. People had great intentions. They wanted to get young people engaging in their community and their village life, getting them off the streets, giving them something to do. But because they didn't listen and go out and speak to children and young people, they provided a service that young people didn't want. And then people go, oh, I'll give up. What's the point in us doing this? So it is about that engagement. Let's make sure that we're listening to young people, because it does give them better engagement and opportunities to get involved. It does increase their communication skills and develop life skills. So I always think about the fact of sport gives young people something that other sectors just can't give them. And one of those things is about that increased communication skills. So increased communication skills with our teammates, with our coaches. So I'm able to, as a child, you're able to engage with your peers in a way that is sociably acceptable and gets them off a screen as well, more than anything in this day and age. I think actually engaging with a human being is really important. So we're giving them those social skills about how to interact with each other, but also how to interact with adults as well. So that for me is really important. It creates that independence and those creative thinking, that problem solving that sport gives young people. The fact that we're in a situation, and particularly your sport, is amazing in terms of the fact that I've got to learn to read a map, be able to use a compass. I've got a problem solve about how I get around this particular barrier and get from point A to point B. This is an amazing sport that's going to give young people so many opportunities to be able to think for themselves. And then if we're adding on top of that opportunity to be able to be heard and be able to contribute into their service, then that's going to increase and amplify that opportunity for young people. And it will build their self-esteem and confidence. And as we've already said about that increased, team morale and communication with their teammates. And you've put that in the chat about feeling valued and contributing to their sport and their club, and hopefully they go on then to be officials, maybe coaches, other volunteering opportunities. So they're going to give back because they feel valued in their club environment. So any other thoughts about kind of flipping that now a little bit and thinking about, well, what are the benefits for the organisation? So what are the benefits for your clubs, for the NGB, when we're listening to children and young people? So I'll just give you a little second to pop something in the chat, or again, you can unmute as well.
Does it give you a more engaged set of kids? If they feel, I love that. Yeah, if they feel listened to, and you're better able to meet their needs,
absolutely,
they'll be more engaged, won't they? And that'll benefit the club.
Definitely. And I think your colleague here has said that as well about, getting better engagement from the juniors. Sheila's saying about inclusive and keeps interest going and the club alive with all ages fully engaged. Yeah, so that's fantastic. So great great involvement there. So yeah, the first one is, we're going to hear if something's going wrong. As a cynical social worker, so Peter's had to spend many a time listening to me doing me horror stories sometimes. I'm not going to give you any today. But, we're going to know if something's wrong for those children first and foremost. So that's the big thing that we want to know is, are the kids that are engaging with us, are they safe? Are they feeling, happy and thriving in the club environment? We're going to get that safer environment that's open, it's transparent, it's inclusive, it's accountable. And, because the kids are our partners, we should be thinking them as partners with us, and working alongside children and young people. As you're saying there, Anne, it's about that, happier children, in my opinion, and it creates that retention. So we're going to provide a more engaged service. That means that the young people are going to stay longer. And then what they're going to do is they're going to go away and tell all their friends how amazing your club is. So it's going to hopefully generate growth within your clubs as well. We've already talked about that future of the club as well. As Sheila's saying about that fully, all age groups as well. And it's going to increase your knowledge of the children's capacity as well. So by us having good communication with them and listening to their views, we're going to know what they're capable of and where their limits are, and where do we just need to push them a little bit more to get that little bit more out of them and for their experiences. But we're going to know where that line is, because we're going to hear from them, and that's going to make them happier as well. We'll be able to effectively target resources. They're going to give us some new ideas that maybe us older people in the group are kind of forgetting, given, I can say that now because I'm going to be 50 soon. So, us older lot in the group, we're going to hear what their ideas are, because it's a different generation and they've got some unique perspectives as well. So we're going to hear what their lived experiences of our clubs, and from our perspective, and I suppose Peter's perspective as well, as it's going to help with your CPSU annual reviews that we have, maybe future proofing if you've got club audits or club surveys as well that you might be expected to do from an NGB perspective. So there's lots of benefits to the organisation as well as to children and young people. And for me, I always think about the fact of we should be thinking about, rights in sport and throughout sport as well. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the UN Convention of the Right of the Child. So for me, I am a social worker, embedded a lot of my practices from in a youth work perspective, as well as a social work, direct social work in child protection environments as well. But somebody that paid sport to a fairly high level. And I think that what we need to be doing is we need to be making sure that we're not doing sport at the expense of children's rights. And it should be always embedded. Everything that we're doing, whenever we're engaging with children and young people, we need to be thinking about the rights of children and young people. And Liz Twyford from UNICEF talks about, children are given their rights when they're born. They're not taken away, they're not earned, they're theirs. And as adults, we need to give that responsibility for supporting those children and young people to be able to realise their rights. So it's not something that we have the opportunity to share with young people and freely give. They're an automatic right. It's ratified within English legislation or British legislation, sorry. So it's something that legally young people are entitled to. So I always think about the fact of, when I think about abuses that have happened in sport, it's because we're not keeping the rights of the child, the best interest of children at the heart of what we're doing. And there's several articles that I think that really, really hit home for sport and governing bodies. So things like, the right to so Article 6 talks about, the right to life, survival and development. And I think sport is part of a young person's development. It's about that physical literacy that young people are able to get when they participate in sport and physical activity. Article 12 talks about the rights of children's views as well. 28 looks about the education. So again, that comes back to that physical literacy side of things. Article 31 is about rest, play, culture, arts. Well, that is, for me, is about sport and physical activity. So we've got the right to rest and play. That's about young people participating in sport. And one of the things for us in terms of our challenge is that young people should know about their rights. So governments have got a responsibility, but I think as adults as well, we've got that responsibility to make sure that young people know that they've got their rights. Now, I don't know whether people are familiar with Play Their Way campaign. Peter, is this something that you've been promoting in British Orienteering?
It's not gone out for a while now.
So I won't show the whole of the video because I know I've only got a short bit of time, but you know, it's a quick little video.
We need to learn about the different
Just
rights.
play a little bit.
Come on, let's go. Our first treasure is a child's right to be heard and valued.
Every child has the right to express their views and have them taken seriously. As a coach, we should listen to and value what young people say in each session and involve them in decisions that affect their experience.
So I'll just quickly play that. You know, it's a 2.5 minute video, but I think it's worth a watch in terms of Play Their Way. So that's a campaign by Sport England, and they're working with lots of multiple partners, the Children's Coaching Collaborative, so the 3 C's that people talk about. And it's an initiative around having young people as partners within their coaching sessions, so having their voice embedded within their sport and physical activity opportunities. And I think that's really important because we're going to be, you know, quite often we're thinking about sport and you know, my experiences when I was younger playing sport, which was a million years ago now, but you know, it was that top-down approach. So the coach told us what to do, and we didn't really have a voice in it. So, you know, I did A-level PE, and I did, you know, played netball at county regional level, and I just did what my coach told me to do. There wasn't that partnership there. There wasn't that opportunity to go, well, I think this, what about us trying that? Because then I'd be more invested in it and more be able to grow as an individual. And one of the things that the Coaching Collaborative and the Play Their Way campaign is about flipping that on its head and about getting young people to be partners in and co-deliverers within their sessions. So I think just check out the stuff. You know, there's quite a few bits on there on the Play Their Way website. And one of the things for me about the video, it's about thinking about who is engaging. So who's in the room, who's not in the room, how do we engage with children from who've got different protected characteristics. So children from Black and Asian minoritized communities. We're thinking about disabled children, whether we're thinking about younger children or older children, those children that are quiet, maybe those children that are neurodiverse with like autism or ADHD, how are we engaging with them, how are we listening to them as well. So it's important that we'll listen collectively to children that are engaging with our services. So I mentioned briefly before about creating that safer culture. So I didn't go into detail because I knew I had this slide coming up. I didn't want to repeat myself, but how do we create that safer culture? And it's about all of the things, all those jigsaw pieces that help us to be able to make sure that we've got a safer environment for children and young people, but for you, for volunteers, for your coaches, for you know, everybody that's involved, all the participants as well involved in our sport and opportunities. And it is about, you know, are we embedded, we've got safer recruitment embedded in the things that we're doing, and that's a practical step that we can take. You know, if we've got whistleblowing policies, are we thinking about things from a equality, diversity and inclusion perspective, code of conduct, safeguarding policies, disciplinary, people having the opportunity for those one-to-one check-ins, see if things are working out okay, inductions, thinking about how we use technology as well, particularly in your sport, about keeping children safe, using different pieces of technology. And the thing for me is about, it should be sitting on a foundation of involving children and young people as well. So all of those things should have the voices of children and young people. So our codes of conduct should reflect the voices of children and young people. Our safeguarding policies are they written in a way that young people can understand, or have we got a child-friendly version of that? Are we involving children and young people in our recruitment of our volunteers and our coaches? So one of the things for me is, you know, I used to do a lot of voice work, and it's very confusing because we use the word participation and know that participation means something different in sport. But I used to do a lot of voice work with children and young people, and we'd have young people involved in recruitment and selection panels, whether it be about volunteers or whether it be about paid members of staff as well. Could be that you've got young people involved in the induction when you've got new volunteers coming into your or into your clubs, getting young people to be involved in that process of telling them, showing them around, explaining what works well in their clubs. So just wanted to move us on in terms of models behind involving children and young people. And we were quite fortunate to have Professor Laura Lundy come and talk to us last week, it was. And she talked about, you know, she got this model which looks at about the spaces and voices for children and young people. And that's about that opportunity that, you know, Article 12 around young people's right to be able to express their views and opinions. And what we need to do as adults is create a psychologically safe place where young people are able to express their views. And that's about, you know, we've already mentioned about all children and young people, not just the ones that, you know, that are quite articulate young people. And what we need to be also thinking about is, you know, those opportunities that who are they going to influence and who's that audience as well. So that's a bit about that weight that we give children and young people's views. So as a social worker, one of the things that, you know, the 1989 Children Act talked about is about, you know, young people having that opportunity to express themselves and given due weight and consideration in terms of their maturity. And that might be some really serious things that I might be involving children and young people in. It might be, you know, things like removing a child from living with their birth parents and, you know, choosing foster carers or, you know, even adoptive parents, and about them having a voice and saying what things worked well at home and what things didn't, and what made them feel unsafe. And that's about their voices. And these are on really, really serious matters that are going to impact a child's life. So for me, I just think actually, if we can do it in a social care environment, we can definitely do it in a sporting environment. And what we need to be doing is we need to be being honest, transparent and open with young people about what weight is given to their decision-making processes. So things like, you know, just saying then about recruitment and selection panels. So one of the things that I used to do with young people is we're always clear about, you know, different times that we're involving young people in recruitment is they got a 25% percentage of the overall mark. Did they get a veto? So I don't know, you got a group of people coming for an interview and the young people go, actually, I didn't like this person, didn't like this person. So it doesn't matter what else happened in that technical interview, they just weren't selected. Or was it about the fact that young people just had an opportunity just to express which candidate they thought was the best? And I always think that honesty is the best policy. So we have to really be clear about what weight young people have got to their decision-making processes. And I just think I put this one on purposely today, so my fleece that I'm wearing today, because the logo was designed by children and young people. So when I used to work for Bernardo's many years ago, we had we set up a new play centre for young people, and they came up with the name because we asked them to figure out, to decide what the new name was going to be and to vote on it and then to design a logo. And it came up with, I can't remember what all the F's are for. So the 4 F's. So as the adults, we were all going, the 4F, no. And it's like the fabulously fun, freaky, fantastic club, I think it was. And then they came up with their logo. And we had to go with what young people had said because we hadn't put any parameters about whether the adults got the final say or not. We just said young people could come up with the name and design the logo. And then we had to stick to that because we needed to respect the young people's views. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to be, you know, again with the 4 F's, I don't know what, like, it just made me think about that today when I was putting my fleece on, the 4 F's. So this is still from the Lundy model. And I've put the link here for people to be able to go and get some of the resources from the website. But it is about making sure that we're giving young people that opportunity to give some fast feedback, and we're able to respond back to them quickly as well. They're able to give a full account of what they want, and we're able to kind of give that back to them as well, explain why we've made decisions. So if we're not fully taking on what young people's views are, then we need to explain that to them. Need to be in a child-friendly as well, a child-friendly way, that we're giving young people information so that they understand exactly what we're asking of them as adults, and that we're following it up and we're giving them that opportunity to be able to understand why decisions have been made. But we need to do that in that open, honest and transparent way as well with children and young people. And this is another model. So people might be familiar with the HEART model, which is, you know, the ladder of participation, which starts at the very bottom, which is tokenism. And I think it's okay for us to acknowledge if we're in a tokenistic environment and go, do you know what, we're just kind of pretending that we're going to take it seriously about the children and young people's voices. Because then we need to reflect on that and go, okay, let's move forward. Because I think that that's where we should always be aspiring to, is to be better. But I really like this model, and this was done by Save the Children, because we can get to a place, so it's not a hierarchical model, because I think sometimes people think that, you know, we need to be doing things, you know, reaching for the top. And sometimes it's about what type of thing we're trying to involve children and young people in that might help us to be able to make a decision about whether something's consulted and informed. So it might be that we're choosing kit, for example, and we've only got, we've got a small budget. So these are the only choices that we've got. So we're just informing young people to sit, and then we're consulting with them, and they might give us some perspectives on it. We might have a child initiated and directed, so they might want some new equipment within the clubhouse, so they make that decision. Oh, you know what we need, Anne? We need some new I was just trying to think of something that you'd have in your clubhouse, and I can't think of anything. I don't know. Flags, I don't know, something random. And they say, oh, we might need some of that. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a car wash for all of the participants that come on Saturday, and we're going to raise enough money to go and get that. And that's fantastic. But it might be that we're actually, it might be an adult initiated, like a recruitment panel, and young people that you're sharing those decisions with adults as well. So it depends on what type of activity that we need to involve children and young people with, that we might look at this degree of involvement and think about how we engage with children and young people on that format. Just maybe, like, if people can pop in the chat, if anybody's got maybe any resources that people have used, or any posters that young people have designed or co-worked with them, maybe get them off your website. It'd be great to be able to share them here if people are already doing some work around involving children and young people. So it might be that you've got it on your Facebook page or your club website. It'd be really handy to know if anybody's doing any of this type of stuff already within their club. So you can either take yourself off mute or pop something in the chat. Peter, is there anything happening?
I was just going to say, while people are just having a think through that, I think it's still been very positive over the last probably 18 months or so now, with the work that clubs have done in highlighting safeguarding on their websites.
Brilliant.
It was what, nearly 2 years ago now, when it was looked, and there wasn't that much information out there, but clubs have done a great job in putting information on there and working through and adding more as they go, appropriate to the members. So very pleasing to see, and certainly should be beneficial to members and those looking at the websites new to the sport.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And maybe this is not about shaming people. This might be the start of the journey for people, isn't it, Peter? And I think, you as an organisation, don't have a large cohort of young people anyway involved in your sport. If you compared it to like my sport, netball, it's quite a smaller population, isn't it, percentage wise? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah, so yeah, guessing some junior squads are doing this, absolutely. And it might be that it's happening, maybe Peter, at the talent squads that you've got moving up the processes. And it might be that it's just something new to everybody, and everybody's here just coming to learn today, and that's absolutely fine, because I think we've all got to start somewhere on that journey, haven't we?
It's finding what obviously works as well. It's every sport is different in its own way, and with orienteering, it's without having a fixed base. There's not many clubs will be in the same place every week doing a training session. So there are a few, but a lot of people will move around a lot, so it makes it a bit more tricky to have that profile. But it's looking at, well, if we can't do it this way, how can we do it, and working through. So actually, is that something that prior to training sessions is highlighted, or a training program? So certainly at regular interviews intervals is highlighted to people in the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is about how do we make it accessible for young people? How do we make it child friendly? So they've come into your training sessions. They don't necessarily want to sit there and listen to some adult going on and asking them questions and doing boring surveys and stuff like that. So maybe can we make it fun and, you know, as part of the training processes as well? And it's just about how we embed that. And conscious of time, Peter, and just moving on. And I think volunteers are a bit, do you know what? I agree with you, Sheila. I think the minute we use the word safeguarding, I think people just go, oh my gosh, and start to panic. And I think that's why we need to try and normalize it and just think about, I always think about safeguarding, just about having a conversation with somebody and just caring about people. That's all it is. It literally is just those basic things about, you know, trying to make sure that we're caring for these young people while they're in our, you know, while we're looking after them for a couple of hours every Saturday or every Tuesday, whenever you're doing club night, and making sure that they're fit, they're well, they're happy, they're thriving, and they feel safe. And that's all it is. So I think sometimes we do use that word, Sheila, and people really do get quite anxious about it. And I think ultimately it's just about caring for people, regardless of whether we're talking about children or adults as well. And I think our challenge is thinking about young people is, you know, how do we create things that maybe is a bit more child friendly? And if we're thinking about the voices of children and young people, access, you know, Article 12 talks about information in a variety of sources and ways that make sense for children and young people. And I think you don't need to go out there and create them, because I think there's a lot of stuff already out there as well. So, you know, it could be that you do an internet safety day and promoting that within your clubs. Well, go on the NSPCC website and we've got things like Pantosaurus. I'm not going to play, I love Pantosaurus, and I'm not going to start singing the song You'll Be All Pleased to Know. But it's things like this, sharing these types of assets, maybe with your clubs. He's going to help us. So I'll just play a little bit.
What's in your pants belongs only to you. Your pants cover up your private parts. Your private parts belong only to you. If someone asks to see, just tell them no.
I think you get the theme about what Pantosaurus is all about. And I know that's aimed at younger children, but on the NSPCC website, on Childline website as well, we've got lots and lots of different assets that you're able to use over various days, you know, kind of thinking about those calendars of events that we have when we've, you know, there's usually once a week there's some highlighting a special week where we're trying to engage with people and various things. You know, this one's quite topical for teenagers, so young people who you know, have shared images of themselves. They've been tricked into sharing an indecent image of themselves. And Childline have got an amazing service where the young people are able to contact them directly and ask them to remove those images. So again, another video.
I couldn't believe it when my nude was shared online. I didn't know what to do. I just knew I wanted it down fast. Then I found Report Remove. They supported me to report the image confidentially, and then it actually got removed.
So Childline, who's one of the NSPCC brands, I'm sure we all remember Esther Ranson in terms of, you know, her, you know, inspiration for Childline and setting it up, and we've taken over the running of that service. You know, it's instrumental for supporting children and young people, and you know, we're keeping up with the times. So it's not just about young people phoning up. There's lots of different ways that young people can engage in Childline and in things that make sense for them. So we know that this is a big issue for young people. So we've got that service that works with the Internet Watch Foundation to be able to remove images as well. So again, you know, just utilising your platforms out there, you know, your WhatsApp groups, your Facebook groups, or your Facebook pages, to be able to kind of say, hey, it's Internet Safety Day, for example, you know, here's some support from Childline and stuff like that. You can also look at what other organisations are doing as well. So there's a couple of assets that we created for school games national finals, where we look after the safeguarding of children and young people. around how to keep safe on social media. This one's from Swim England. One of our colleagues here, Graham, used to work for the Swans, Swansea City, when it was in the Premier League. So he was a safeguarding manager there. We've got Swim Islands. They developed this with their young people. And this one's Welsh FA. So there's things that you can do to create some assets for young people. So, you know, quite often young people are able to do a lot of these digital fancy stuff as well. You might have somebody who's got that skills within your organisation. And it might be that's something that maybe Peter and the team go away and help with some templates. There's also templates on the CPSU website as well, that you're able to access, which are a bit more user-friendly, child-friendly, of who to go to if they've got a concern. So just maybe thinking about yourselves, really, it'd be great if anybody wants to come off mute and just maybe say about, you know, when young people raise a concern, so whether it be a concern that's happening at home, at school, within their sport, maybe thinking about ways that we can engage with children and young people, maybe some top tips that people have got around how they're able to make sure that young people feel comfortable with raising a concern. Any thoughts from people? Maybe if there's any club welfare officers, what things that they do. Peter, you were going to jump in, I think, then.
I thought I'd just unmute just while people are having a think there. And yeah, it's always a challenge, because I think it goes back to obviously what Sheila mentioned earlier in how do you handle these situations. I think one of the important things is to remember that there are lots of people out there that can help and support. But your role is very much, as what you said earlier, Liza, is there to be an ear to hear. So it's your natural instinct almost of actually caring for somebody and listening. So trying to make them just feel comfortable, and when somebody does raise it, is just being there to listen. And I think that's, for me, that's just caring and listening is two key areas for it.
Absolutely. And I said, you know, it's about having that conversation, isn't it? And just checking in with people. Anne, have you unmuted?
Yes, I think it can be really challenging in orienteering. I mean, I'm an ex-social worker, but we're a very small club and have very few regular children coming. We don't have a regular meeting place. We don't do junior training. So essentially it's people coming along with their kids to an event.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, what are the opportunities, really?
Yeah. And it is hard, isn't it, when you haven't got an ongoing relationship with children and young people? But sometimes it's just about noticing as well, isn't it? And
yeah,
just
exactly.
Taking that
it's
time,
about keeping your antennae flapping, isn't it, really?
I'll go back to, there was a situation, not a situation, but there was a concern. Obviously, I will not be revealing anybody's names or clubs, but it's a really good example. Now, I know this one related to an adult. However, again, the same principle perfectly applies to a children or a young person, where they were concerned for the individual's welfare at the event, and they supported the individual to get home, and they got in touch with us as well. They were concerned, so they wanted to make sure that everything was fine, and we've got in touch with the individual, and they were just really grateful that somebody was checking in, and that's all it took. That they got the support from the club at the time, so we're given some support to get transport home, and then obviously we spoke to them, and that was it. And that's it. Didn't need anything further, but it was the gratefulness of that individual member as well. And it reassured obviously the club. The club did entirely the right thing. And again, it's just about being kind and thoughtful, and just watching out for somebody that, like a lot of our clubs, they will see a lot of people from outside and other clubs coming along that you won't be familiar with. But they said they found the name, and they got in touch with us, and we just made sure that they were fine, and that's really important.
So that can make the world a difference for people, isn't it? You know, and use the word antennae, so like that professional curiosity, isn't it? That curiosity, if somebody just doesn't look okay, that we just be kind and caring and compassionate and just, are you all right? And sometimes we just, as you can all tell, I am a talker, but I'm also a really good listener as well. So it's just about creating those opportunities, those safe spaces for pauses and an opportunity for people to fill the space. I think that's really important for people. And then following it up, Peter, I love that you've just checked in. Are you okay? And that could make the world a difference for an individual. Fantastic. So last week when we did have Laura Lundy, Professor Laura Lundy, who's a, you know, she's obviously an expert in this field. You know, she was talking last week around, you know, she's done some research into like child protection side of things. And you know, sometimes as social workers, we talk about like, you know, like protection versus participation, that voice bit, participation as in voice. And it shouldn't be versus, it should be and. It shouldn't be one or the other. We should always be listening to children and young people. So whether it be when there's a concern happening or just about how we run our sessions, you know, it could be on that smaller level. So if we're listening to children and young people, when it's on the smaller things like how we run our coaching sessions, we're more likely to hear their views when something's not right in their lives. And I appreciate, Anne, that you maybe don't get the opportunity to engage with young people on a regular basis, but they might kind of go, oh, she was all right, I remember her last time and it came last time, and now I've got this thing worrying me. And it might just be that you planted that seed and you don't see that child for a while longer, but they might develop that trusting relationship. And one of the things that Laura Lundy was, and her colleagues, Mitchell and Hill, was when they did all the research around serious cases, is like children can't be kept safe if they are not heard. And they can't be heard where they're not feeling safe. So it's our challenge really. It's about how do we create an environment where young people feel safe to be able to tell us when they've got concerns that are involved, you know, in their lives. Worries, big or small, doesn't really matter. It doesn't, you know, Sheila's talking there about, you know, safeguarding. Safeguarding could be about the fact that as a small child and being bullied at school, that could be the most, and it will be the most important thing in that child's life. But we need to listen to that. And then if we raise it, you know, with Peter, and Peter can get in contact with the, you know, the relevant school or statutory agencies, and we could make a really significant difference in that one child's life. You know, and just by listening and taking that opportunity for helping a child to feel safe in our, when they're in our care. And that's all about that, you know, participant welfare side of things. So I think we're moving away from, you know, that whole child protection thing. And I know it feels strange because we're called the Child Protection and Sport Unit. We hopefully going to get a name change soon to reflect the modern world that we're in now, which is about the welfare of looking after people. So hopefully we'll kind of be able to reflect that. And I think we all need to move into that space really where we're thinking about well-being, welfare, looking after people and caring for people. And this is what I was saying before around us being the village that raises a child. So we're doing a longitudinal study with Loughborough University since 2017. And we get all of the, you know, all of the, I think it's like about 50 NGBs that we're working with. And in fact, it might be more than that because it might include the home nations as well. They provide us with their case data. So it's all anonymised. We just know the numbers and the type of abuse or harm that a child's experienced. And out of all of the concerns that are happening within sport or that are reported to within sport to the likes of Peter and his colleagues, the lead safeguarding officers, 55% of those concerns were outside of sport. So there was things that were worrying children or concerning children that were happening outside of their sport and physical activity. 45% of it were things that were happening in sport. So we can see there from the different graphs and stuff, you know, a really important part of making sure that children and young people are safeguarded around multiple different areas that are affecting them. And some of them are maybe, you know, I don't know whether people are surprised by the statistics, but, you know, particularly outside sport, we've got, if you look in there, you've got 62% of sexual abuse in outside of support, out of the 55% that are outside of sport, 62% were about sexual abuse. So whether it be contact sexual abuse or non-contact, so that might be things like indecent images. It might be some peer-on-peer stuff with young people taking images like underneath cubicles and changing rooms and stuff like that. But we're a really important part of keeping children safe, and that's the bit for me that I want to get over. It's not just about what happens in sport, it's also what happens outside of their sport as well. We can see within the figures in terms of sexual abuse is much lower, 36% inside sport. But things like physical abuse, emotional abuse, we know is quite an issue, particularly on the back of the gymnastics report, the White report, that highlighted some of those concerns around physical abuse and emotional abuse that those young people would experience as well. So things like overtraining, training when injured, issues with body image because of the way, from the emotional abuse that maybe coaches were given the messages to young people about how their body image, their body weight impacts on their gymnastics performance. Okay, so I got lots of videos. I think I got really happy with when Peter was asking me to do this. I was like, oh, I've got some boss videos I can show people, but then I didn't really think about the fact that I've only got an hour with you. So I'm going to send Peter through the slides anyway. So if people want to go away and want to watch all the videos in full, they can do. But I'll show this. I think this one's it's 2 minutes, but it's if we're thinking about when young people raise a concern, so in CPSU, so if we differentiate between our wider NSPCC colleagues, we don't say a disclosure, because what we want to do is we want to take the severity out of it, in terms of we want people to report things at a lower stage. We don't want to wait until things get to a serious concern. So that just what we would maybe term as a disclosure, and it's quite a legal term. What we would like to see within sport and physical activity, and we're seeing that movement already, I'm sure Peter will be able to say, is we want to hear about things when they're that lower level concerns, those poor practices, because if we deal with them at lower end, then hopefully they don't end up being a super serious issue, and we're reducing the likelihood of harm from happening to children. So I'll just play you this video. So if young people, if you've got club welfare officers on the call or coaches, and a young person does come to you with a concern or worry, these are maybe some top tips that we can do when young people do raise those concerns, and we're listening to them when they're worried about something.
Never easy when a young person discloses abuse. There are probably 1,000 things going through your head, from trying to remember your organisation's safeguarding procedure to asking the right questions. Should you be asking questions at all? But no matter how anxious you're feeling, it's worth remembering that most young people only choose to talk to someone they really trust. So chances are you're already doing something right. Whatever the situation, here are a few simple things you can do to create a safe space for a better conversation. Help them open up. For some children, talking about abuse can be scary. You need to show them that you care and that you are listening to what they say. This can be as simple as changing your body language, and avoid anything that can make you seem distracted or distant. Keep your focus on them. They're the most important thing right now. Slow down and take your time. This chat might only be a small part of the disclosure. They could just be testing the water, so let them go at their own pace. Even if the gaps in the conversation feel awkward to you, it's their story. Give them time to tell it. Reflect back and show you understand by simply going through what they've told you already. If possible, use their language. The specific words they use are an important part of their narrative. And although it's easy to jump to conclusions, or even solutions, right now they just need to feel listened to. You can practice these techniques whenever someone's telling you a story, helping them to open up, slowing things down, and reflecting back in everyday conversations. Won't just make you a better listener, but will also prepare you for when a disclosure does happen. It could change a young person's life.
So there's some additional resources on NSPCC Learning. So there's quite a few websites as part of the NSPCC brand. So we've got obviously our website, which is separate. So the Child Protection and Sport Unit, CPSU. There's the regular NSPCC website, and then there's the NSPCC Learning website, and there's loads of materials on there as well that people might find helpful. So this is one of the videos that I've taken from there, our colleagues' website. So some top tips there, show that you care, help them open up, take your time, slow down, and show you understand and reflect back to that child or young person. And it doesn't matter how big or small it is. I think we can use these techniques, whether it be that, we had a concern at school games a few years ago when I was looking after the safeguarding for the weekend. We had like 1,000 kids doing 10 sports, and it sounds really silly, but one of the kids raised a concern to the safeguarding officer that their mum, they were really upset because they didn't win their race, and the mum wouldn't let them play with the puppy when they got home that weekend because they were with us. And you might think, oh, that just sounds really mean and horrible. But actually what happened with that is it ended up being a bigger concern, because when we went back to the national governing body of sport, there was various things that had been picked up around emotional abuse and emotional harm. And that, just from that, somebody taking the time to listen to that child who was upset about not being able to play with a new puppy when she got home because she didn't win a race, unraveled a whole load of other concerns. And it was a multidisciplinary sport, so the other NGB, so it was one NGB, but then they did other sports as part of that. They all had concerns as well. So just by one person being curious, listen to that child, by using some of these techniques, was able to safeguard that child, and we were able to raise that with statutory agencies and get some help and support for that family that desperately needed that intervention. So it doesn't matter how small it is, you think, oh, that's something really silly, they can't play with a puppy, but actually that was really a significant thing for that child. She was so upset, and then it ended up being making a bigger picture. So that jigsaw puzzle really about was pulling all those pieces together from the other people who had little bits of information. And for us, it's about, do we recognise that something just doesn't feel right? So something in your stomach that just goes, that just doesn't feel right. And, sometimes we can't act on our gut instincts alone. I always think that, there's Professor Eileen Monroe, who's a senior social worker or educated in the social work space. She talks about the fact it's based on our experiences and it's based on our intuition. It's not just something that's kind of like voodoo or whatever. Actually, we do need to listen to that. What is our gut telling us? And let's just be curious about that. Let's ask, raise those concerns, raise them with Peter and other colleagues, as the relevant colleagues, to be able to recognize that actually it doesn't feel right. So I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to listen to what that child's got to say. I'm going to use some of the techniques that the NSPCC Learning have given us. I'm going to refer that into Peter, and I'm going to use the right recording. So we talk about those 4 R's. So recognise that something just doesn't feel right. It doesn't have to be a serious child protection thing. It can be something really small. But we're going to respond to it. We're going to respond appropriately. So follow what your policy and your procedure says about how we respond to it. So, not telling everybody, raising it with your club welfare officers, that type of thing, not promising to keep secrets to children and young people, refer it in, utilising the new flow chart, and use the proper recording. Peter, I'm just going to bring you in here now, because you've got this new template, haven't you? And you've got the new flow chart as well. I think both of them are new, aren't they?
Yeah, there's been a few things that have been updated, documents, so I'd refer everyone back to the safeguarding pages on the British Orienteering website. We've, like the whole website, it had a complete refresh nearly a year ago now, so it's all a bit more tidier, a bit easier to access through there. So we have all the information that is on there, and there's a new incident reporting form. It's getting Joe's just working on some tweaks to update it so that it's going to evolve, so it'll be more appropriate for the safeguarding aspect as well, so that we do have all the usual forms, but it's also an accessible, easier way through the website as well. So that's in development as well shortly. So we'll still take safeguarding concerns clearly through the other form as well. If anything, any form of reporting, we will obviously take that through as well. But yeah, lots on there at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Peter. And I think when we were talking in prep for this, you were mentioning about the template incident forms being used for accidents as well. Is that right? Am I getting that right, or am I wrong about that?
Yes, it's we were trying to have one hub so that if there's any incident, whether it's environmental, safeguarding, if someone's broken their ankle, anything, you can go to one location and you can then pick out. You can go down the drop-down list to pick out which particular area it's from. So it's all in one spot, and you're not having to think of which form do I need for this.
Brilliant. I love that, streamlining that process. Fantastic. And I think that for me, thinking about like accidents and incidents and stuff, so one of the things that we do at school games is actually everything gets reported in centrally to CPSU. And it includes things like accidents. So, and we know kids get injured doing sport. I mean, I literally have broken all my ligaments in my body, and I'm not allowed to do sport now anyway because I'm just like going to fall apart. But like some of it's about, is it about training techniques that we're using as well? Are we using equipment that's like, outdated and stuff like that? So it gives us some really clear indications if there's something, maybe not right as well. And then going back to the gymnastics stuff, I read quite a lot of the accounts because I helped with some of the triage when they first got that influx following athlete A. And some of the things could have been picked up from incident reports because of accidents that were happening or training, because some of it was really, really poor coaching techniques that resulted in people having maybe, were being overtrained, was being forced back into competition or training when they weren't fit enough to be back training from and maybe a niggle and stuff like that. So these are kind of that wider welfare side of things as well that could get picked up through this reporting mechanism, because it gives us maybe a bigger jigsaw puzzle as well about people's behaviours and attitudes towards children and young people doing sport. So I think it's really valuable. So it's great that you've got that new system in place there, Peter, that streamlines that all together.
Richard just asked a really relevant question as well. Is the avoidance of asking leading questions still of importance?
Absolutely, Richard. Thanks for picking that up.
Okay.
Obviously, not got time to go into all of the details around how we would, kind of questioning styles of children and young people. But I always think, just ask open-ended questions. So you can ask clarifying questions, but don't lead a child saying, okay, on Tuesday night, did Liza hit you? Because that's clearly we're leading a child or a potential witness, because a crime might have happened as well.
Because I know there have been cases of concerns falling through simply because the adult has been found to be asking questions and putting words in the children's mouths.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just creating that space, isn't it, for young people to be able to raise concern. So what happened next? I think what happened, who was there, asking those what, why, who, when questions, but not putting context behind that. So don't go, what happened when Liza hit you? Just leaving it blank. So the less we can ask, the better it is in terms of the detail of the question, and just creating silences so people can fill that silence, Richard.
And if we had to actually came to a point where we did have to actually write something down, it's important, isn't it, to actually write down what the child says and not try to put your own interpretation on it.
Absolutely, 100%. For me, it's always about using exactly the children's words, but I think using the child's words, I think, is really important, and that should be reflected in our incident reports as well. So what did the child actually say? And I always think about as foster carer I worked with Sue, so she had a sibling group who lived with her for a long time, and we suspected that there was sexual abuse. The behaviours were clearly telling us that there was sexual abuse happening, and then one day this child just came out and just said a load of stuff. Sue just sat there listening to what the child said. I think she was just tucking him into bed, and then literally run downstairs. The only thing she had, like the back of the water bill envelope, wrote everything, wrote exactly what the child's words were. and then had to go, and when she had to go to, you know, to court, it was obviously care proceedings and stuff. She brought the envelope with her, and you know, she signed and dated the envelope that she would, what you know, what the kids had said and stuff. And you know, the judge commended her on that because she just wrote down, she listened empathetically, with care, with compassion, all of the things that the video was talking about, and just listened to what the children said, and they just poured out their heart to her. And you know, she wasn't sitting there with a notebook, she just went. And we might forget some things, I get that, but just as quickly as possible, let's try and record as much detail as we can do. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for picking that up, Richard. I am conscious of time. One of the things that Peter wanted me to remind people about, or maybe introduce people to, is the sport welfare officers. So this is part of the Active Partnership Network, and Sport England have put a lot of money investing into local support for people. So obviously Peter is over in the Matlock area. Can't be everywhere, can you, Peter, across the whole of the country? But in England, anyway, at least we've got an army of sport welfare officers who are, they're all trained people. Quite often people with social care experience or youth work experience or working with children and young people, and they're there to be able to help you at the ground floor level. So they're in all of the active partnerships across the country. So I think there's like 50 odd sport welfare officers out there that are able to help and support you, and they're there to help you with creating a safer and more inclusive environment, and to improve experiences for children and adults as well. So it's not just about children. That network is there to support you with adults as well, and it is to give you increased capacity and support outside of the NGB as well. And I know, Peter, you're one of the organisations that are supporting this initiative, because Peter can't be everywhere all at once, and it is about these groups of these members of staff are people with safeguarding and welfare experience as well. So what can they offer you? They've got that connect, so they can provide that connection with clubs, offer one-to-one support as well, give you some bespoke support. Some of the initiatives are, I think they've been doing some work with English Cricket Board, so ECB, around the voices of children and young people. So some of the, quite a lot of the network are involved with supporting the voices of children and young people. So if you wanted somebody to come in and help with some of that, they're able to do that. They're able to raise awareness with parents as well, and carers. And they're able just to signpost you as well about what's going on locally, within that safer culture space, to be able to help you to create a more inclusive club. So they're there for you to support all clubs from every sport that's funded through Sport England, one of them being British Orienteering, and it's there just to give you that additional capacity as well. So you'll be able to scan the QR code when you get the slides as well. And just to finish up with, really, I'm going to finish off with Laura Lundy again, because she's kind of like, I'm fangirl crushing at the moment. I think she's amazing. I loved her before. I loved it even more now after having a direct conversation with her last week. And I think it just goes back to the children's right bit, really, about, it's not a gift, but it is our challenge. It's our challenge to be able to think about how can we create a sport and activity where it is feeling inclusive, it feels safe for children and young people for them to be able to express their views and work in partnership with adults around their sport and physical activity. So it's not just about when things are going wrong. It's about those little things that we do day in, day out to make sure that young people know that we're their trusted adults and that we're hearing their voices and we value them, which was the key word that came out of the first bullet point and the first things that you put in the chat. We want our young people to feel valued in orienteering, and the way that we do that is by doing that through a rights-based perspective. So that was me, Peter. That was the end of my slides. Look at me being on time for once. That was my challenge for today.
That's a great start to the year. Well done. I really enjoy your sessions. I think they're just, I love your enthusiasm, and it's certainly matched by your knowledge. But no, I really enjoy them, really informative every time. And I know I've seen some of the personally seen some of the videos, but it's always interesting to watch them. And I don't know how other people feel, but they get quite catchy, which is obviously part of the intention. So you remember them and have a look through. And yeah, no, I think they were really good, and I hope everyone really got some good tidbits out of that to understand a bit more and support our networks.
Yeah, brilliant. I don't know whether anybody has any questions. You can pop it in the chat or unmute. If anybody has anything else to ask as well, you've got me here for captive audience. We used to have a saying in our team. Remember our colleague Nick? So if people are silent, they've agreed with everything I say. That's what Nick used to say. Brilliant. Oh well, yeah. Peter, it's been a pleasure as ever. I always think it's I always have a lovely time when I'm spending with British Orienteering. It's a different sport from the other traditional sports that I work with. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and it sounds like it's maybe the start of the journey for you as an organisation, for lots of clubs thinking about the voices of participants. Obviously, from my perspective, it's about children, but anything else I can do to help, please just shout out. If people wanted a bit more practical support about how we can do that and implement that, then happy to come back and do another session on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. If there are any questions or anything that comes up afterwards, you want a discussion, then just get in touch. We can have a chat, and we can certainly pass on any information on to Liza as well if there's anything particularly you want to know a bit further that way.
And I've just seen Sheila's asked in the chat about whether we can send out links to videos or post them. That is something that I'll aim to get on board. I know that it'll be good to get the links out. So hopefully I'll be able to get them all out in the email that will contain the video recording of the session that will go out to everybody. And keep an eye on the British Orienteering social media channels. I'm sure we can get a couple of videos posted on there as well.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that all of the videos, there's a link at the bottom underneath, so people will be able to access them. So I'll make sure that that's in there as well for people.
Fantastic. And a huge thank you again, Liza. Brilliant session. Peter stole my little bit that I do the roundup at the end, so all I can say is thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's been said almost, well, definitely a lot better than I could have put into words by Peter. And a huge thank you to everybody for attending as well, for all the interaction. Just as a couple little closing bits, the email should come out hopefully tomorrow. Depends on how nice the editing suite is to me tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be coming out maybe on Thursday, and that you should get an email with all the information on. I'll get those video links on as well as the feedback form for the session, and also who you can get in touch with to ask more questions.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, you can.
I think a while ago Peter talked about developing a QR code that we could put on our posters on the notice boards as a sort of direct link to the BOF safeguarding website. I didn't imagine that, did I? And I wondered what had happened about that.
I shall go through that. I think because we've had the different changes with the reporting, we've just held back on it for a little bit.
Okay, so that's going to happen then.
But yes,
brilliant.
We'll still have something ready.
Thank you.
On top
that
of that,
was a great
as well,
session.
Oh, thanks, Anne.
As well, I know, Anne, it might be something along a similar lines that will help, but hopefully, touch wood for the future, the online reporting that we discussed, I'll be able to pop together a little video, so it'll instruct people on how to turn it into an app on their phones. So it'll give it a little icon, just something, again, the aim of just making everything a bit more convenient and a bit more streamlined.
Brilliant.
So that and a QR code, I think it'll be the most visible it's ever been, which is good. Just to promote the next session quickly before everybody disappears, we have one on Thursday, which will be the Recognised Delivery Partner Scheme. So we'll be having all 4 of our pilot delivery partners showing how they're orienteering in schools. They'll all be doing their own presentations and a short Q&A as well. It's going to be a really positive one. If you do have any links with schools, then I encourage you to share the link to that as well. It's going to be very helpful for anybody, and we are going through some work as well with the school games. refreshing the office. So there's a lot going on at the moment. I know that Liza before said about the instant reporting for the school games. I think I was on a few of those for breaking fingers here and there back playing wheelchair basketball. So it all seems to come full circle in sport.
It does.
So I will pop links into the chat quickly. It will have the feedback form, and it also has mine Howard's emails for all things development conference. That should have gone through there. If you have a couple of minutes for the feedback form, it'd be really appreciated. And there's a chance for you to suggest which sessions you'd like to see next as well, which is really important because it means we can get exactly what people are asking for. That might come throughout the year or in the next development conference as well. And it'll be very much decided by the members so we can get all the best information to you. That is more than enough little ramble at the end here from me. So I'll say a huge thank you again to Liza and to everybody for attending. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.